The avoidant expects you to reach. That is the honest starting point. Whatever the surface behavior suggests, the silence, the distance, the apparent ease of the separation, underneath it, the avoidant system is running a quiet expectation that you will break first, not as a calculated prediction. As the background assumption of someone whose experience of intimate relationships has consistently confirmed a particular pattern. When distance is created, the other person reaches. When the avoidant goes quiet, the person who loves them eventually breaks the silence. When the walls go up, someone on the other side keeps knocking. This expectation was formed through experience. Was accurate in previous relationships, has been reinforced enough times that it operates as the default prediction rather than as a consciously held belief. And when you don't reach, when the silence holds, when the no contact is genuine rather than strategic, the avoidant encounters something their system did not specifically prepare for, the prediction failing. Why the expectation exists? The avoidant's expectation of your reaching is not arrogance, is not the conscious belief that they are so significant you cannot help but return, is the specific, experience-based pattern recognition of someone who has been in enough intimate relationships to have observed the dynamic reliably. People who love avoidance tend to be people with significant empathic capacity, who perceive clearly, who understand with unusual accuracy what is happening beneath the avoidant's surface behavior, who can feel the love beneath the distance and the fear beneath the withdrawal. And that perception, that genuine, accurate, sees the person beneath the behavior quality, tends to produce reaching. Tends to produce the patient, understanding, I know what is really happening here quality of someone who keeps the door open because they genuinely understand why the avoidant closed it. The avoidant has encountered this before. Has been the recipient of the patient reaching, the understanding that outlasted the distance, the love that persisted through the withdrawal because the person doing the loving genuinely understood the withdrawal was fear rather than finality. That history is what produces the expectation. You will reach because people who genuinely understand do not stop reaching. What the avoidant does with the expectation. The expectation functions as a specific kind of cushion. It makes the distance more comfortable than it would otherwise be. If the reaching is coming, if the pattern holds, then the distance is not actually a severing, is a temporary state. Is the avoidance preferred configuration being temporarily imposed while the other person's patience runs its course and the reaching resumes? In this framing, the avoidance no contact is not a real ending, is a pause, a restoration of preferred distance that will be followed, as it has been followed before, by the other person's return to contact. This cushion allows the avoidant to inhabit the distance without fully reckoning with what the distance means, without fully accounting for what is being lost, without encountering the full weight of the absence because the expectation of the reaching makes the absence feel temporary. The expectation is protective, keeps the distance from feeling like the cost it actually is. Which is why the expectation failing, the reaching not coming, the silence holding, the no contact being genuine, does something specific that the avoidant was not prepared for. It removes the cushion. The surprise of genuine silence. When your no contact is real, when it comes from genuine redirection of your life rather than from strategic calculation, the avoidance system encounters the prediction failing without a prepared response. The reaching was supposed to come. The pattern was supposed to hold. The distance was supposed to be a temporary state that the other person's patient love would eventually interrupt. Instead, the silence continues, persists. Has a quality the avoidance system registers as different from previous silences, not the charged silence of someone who is not reaching while remaining fundamentally oriented toward the avoidant, but the quieter, more complete silence of someone who is genuinely elsewhere. The distinction matters. The avoidance nervous system, calibrated to read relational environments with unusual sensitivity, feels the difference between someone who is not reaching and someone who has genuinely redirected. One is absence of contact, the other is absence of orientation. The absence of orientation is what produces the surprise. Because the expectation was that the orientation would remain even when the contact did not, that you would be pointed toward them even in your silence, that the love would keep you fundamentally available even when you were not actively reaching. And you are not. The orientation has genuinely shifted. You are somewhere, actually somewhere. In your own life, with your own direction, genuinely occupied with your own existence. That is what surprises them, what happens inside the surprise. The surprise produces a sequence. First, confusion. The pattern is not holding, the prediction is failing. The system's model of how this dynamic works is encountering evidence that contradicts it. The avoidant does not immediately know what to do with the confusion. Then, the checking, the quiet, deniable, maximum plausible deniability reconnaissance of whether the silence is temporary or genuine, the monitoring of peripheral signals, the assessment of whether you are simply in a longer than usual phase of the pattern or whether something has actually changed. The checking produces evidence that something has changed. The quality of your absence is different. There are no signals of ongoing orientation. The monitoring returns nothing that suggests the reaching is imminent. Then, the alarm loosening into something more uncomfortable than alarm. Loss, not the theoretical loss that the alarm was always responding to. The actual present tense this is happening now experience of something genuine being genuinely gone. The cushion removed, the distance reveals its actual character. Not a pause, not a temporary state pending the resumption of the pattern, an actual absence with actual weight. And the avoidant who had the cushion of the expectation and is now without it, encounters their own interior more honestly than the cushion was allowing, what the honest interior contains. Stripped of the cushion, without the expectation's protection from the full weight of the absence, what the avoidant finds in their interior is worth describing accurately. They find the missing. Specific, located, knows exactly what it is missing. Not the ambient loneliness of someone who has reduced connection generally, but the particular, named, this person missing that genuine attachment produces when the attachment is genuinely gone. They find the recognition. The slowly arriving, cannot be fully managed back down understanding of what your presence actually was. What the quality of it consisted of, what the specific register of experience you activated that is not being activated by the general resumption of life. They find the question, the one the cushion was protecting them from having to ask. Whether the distance was what they actually wanted or whether it was the pattern running, and the pattern running is not the same thing as what they actually want. That question, arriving without the cushion's protection, in the genuine experience of an absence that is not resolving according to expectation, is the most significant thing your genuine no contact produces, not the answer. The question, because the question, honestly held, is the beginning of the only kind of reckoning that produces genuine change. Why this surprises you. The surprise runs in both directions. You expected the no contact to feel more straightforward. Expected that the silence would produce clarity, either the avoidant would reach, demonstrating that the connection mattered, or they wouldn't, demonstrating that it didn't. What you did not expect is the complexity of actually being in the no contact. The way the habit of orientation toward them persists even when the contact doesn't. The way the love continues without requiring contact to sustain itself. The way genuine no contact requires something more than simply not reaching, requires the actual, sustained redirection of attention toward your own life that makes the not reaching the natural consequence of being genuinely somewhere rather than a discipline being effortfully maintained. You did not expect how much work genuine no contact requires. Not the work of not reaching, that becomes easier over time. The work of actually being in your own life, of attending to your own interior with the same quality of genuine curiosity you have historically brought to the avoidance. Of rebuilding the genuine occupation of your own existence that the dynamic drew on without adequately replenishing. That work is real, and its reality surprises most people who enter no contact expecting it to be primarily about what they are not doing rather than about what they are actively building. What actually serves you here? Not the monitoring of whether your no contact is producing the expected surprise in the avoidant, not the assessment of whether the silence is doing what silence is supposed to do in their interior, the genuine occupation of your own life. Which is both the thing that produces genuine no contact and the thing that is worth building regardless of what the no contact produces in them. The avoidance expectation failing is real, the surprise is real, the reckoning it potentially produces is real, and none of it is yours to manage. Your job, if the word applies, is to be genuinely in your own life, not as the move that surprises them. Not as the strategy that removes the cushion and produces the reckoning, as the honest, present, actually invested expression of someone who is building something that belongs entirely to them. That building is real whether or not it produces anything in the avoidant, is worth doing whether or not anyone notices the noticing. Is yours, completely. Now, that is the honest end of this. The avoidant surprise has been described. What 3,000 more words can honestly do is examine something that deserves more direct treatment than it has received. The entire framing of what avoidants secretly expect during no contact, and whether the expectation is being met or surprised, keeps the primary orientation exactly where it has been throughout this body of work. On the avoidant, what they expect, what surprises them, what their system does when the prediction fails, what the surprise produces in their interior, what the reckoning looks like when the cushion is removed, all of it real, all of it accurately described, and all of it organized around their experience of your no contact rather than your experience of it. That imbalance is worth correcting. What no contact actually is for the person doing it. No contact is not primarily a tool for producing a particular response in the avoidant. This sounds obvious. In practice, for most people who enter no contact after an avoidant dynamic, it is not obvious at all. Because the primary question that organizes the no contact, however unacknowledged, is almost always some version of what will this produce in them. Will they miss me? Will they reach? Will the surprise of my not reaching produce the reckoning that the reaching never produced? Will the silence do what the love could not? These questions are understandable. They are also the thing that prevents no contact from being what it is actually capable of being. For the person doing it, no contact is, or can be, if it is genuine, the first extended period in a significant time during which the primary question is not about the avoidant. That is what it offers, not as a strategy. As the actual lived experience of what it is like to inhabit your own life without the ongoing orientation toward someone else's interior as the organizing principle. Most people who have been in avoidant dynamics for any significant period have forgotten what that feels like. Have been so long in the habit of the avoidant orientation that the question of what is happening with the avoidant runs as a kind of background program, present even when not consciously accessed, organizing even when not explicitly addressed. No contact, genuinely entered, is the interruption of that program, not the replacement of it with a different strategy. The actual lived discovery of what is present when the program is not running, what is present when the program is not running. For most people, the discovery is not immediately comfortable. The program, however costly, was also organizing, gave the mind something to work on, provided a kind of structure, however painful, however circular, to the interior life. The ongoing processing of the dynamic, the monitoring of signals, the calibration of hope against evidence, these activities are consuming, but they are also engaging. They keep the interior occupied. When they stop, when the program is genuinely interrupted rather than temporarily suspended, what is present is initially the absence of that occupation, which feels before it feels like anything else, like emptiness, not grief exactly, not the sharp ache of active loss, the specific, slightly disorienting emptiness of someone whose primary mental occupation has been removed and who has not yet found what genuinely replaces it. This emptiness is frequently misidentified, is frequently experienced as evidence that the no contact is not working, that the love is too strong to be interrupted, that the dynamic cannot be set down. It is none of those things. It is the natural, expected, entirely temporary experience of a mind that has been running a particular program for an extended period, encountering the program's interruption. The occupation was the program. The program stopped. The mind has not yet found genuine replacement occupation. The replacement is not found through deciding to find it. It is found through the patient, slightly uncomfortable, nobody is watching process of trying things and attending to what actually produces genuine engagement versus what produces the performed appearance of engagement, what actually interests you. Not what should interest you given that you are trying to rebuild your life, what actually in the specific texture of experience produces the quality of absorption that genuine interest produces. This is slower than it sounds, more trial and error than it sounds, less linear than any description of it suggests, and it is the actual work. The real, unglamorous, not for anyone's consumption work that genuine no contact eventually asks of the person doing it. The relationship between genuine no contact and genuine self-knowledge. There is something that extended, genuine no contact produces that nothing else produces in quite the same way. Honest information about yourself. Not the self-knowledge that comes from therapy or reflection or the honest examination of patterns in a quiet moment. Something more direct than that. The self-knowledge that comes from actually living without the dynamic as the organizing principle and discovering, through the living, what is actually there, what you actually enjoy. Not what you told yourself you enjoyed during the relationship, when enjoyment was filtered through the question of whether it was compatible with the avoidant's presence and preferences. What genuinely, in the unobserved reality of your own daily life, produces pleasure, what you actually need from intimacy. Not the minimized version, the version that had been adjusted to fit within what the avoidance capacity allowed. The actual, honest, this is what a relationship needs to contain for me version, which may be more than what the dynamic was providing. Which when honestly faced clarifies the degree to which the previous acceptance of less than you needed was accommodation rather than genuine satisfaction. What your own company is like, whether you are, in the absence of the dynamic's ongoing demands on your attention, someone you find interesting to be with. Whether your own interior is a place you can inhabit with genuine comfort, or whether the monitoring of the avoidant was partly filling a space that your own genuine self-occupation should be filling. These discoveries are not always comfortable. Some of them require honest confrontation with things that had been easier to leave unexamined while the dynamic was providing occupation. The genuine no contact, by removing the occupation, makes the examination necessary rather than optional. The avoidance expectation and what it reveals about the dynamic. The avoidance expectation that you will reach, the quiet, experience-based assumption that the pattern will hold, that the love will produce the reaching, that the silence is temporary because your orientation toward them is permanent, reveals something worth naming directly about what the dynamic had been producing. It reveals that your consistent orientation toward the avoidant, however genuinely loving, had been functioning as a kind of infrastructure the avoidance distance depended on. The distance was comfortable because you were there, not in the room, not in contact, but oriented, available, fundamentally pointed toward them, keeping the possibility alive. The distance could be inhabited with relative ease because the reaching was always coming, was always going to interrupt the silence eventually, was always going to provide the low-level confirmation that the bond persisted regardless of the distance. Your genuine no contact removes that infrastructure, and the removal does something the avoidant had not fully anticipated. It makes the distance actually costly in a way that the distance with your orientation present was not. The distance with you oriented toward them was the avoidant's preferred configuration, intimate enough to provide the warmth of genuine connection, distant enough to prevent the alarm from running at full volume. Your orientation was the thing that made that configuration sustainable. Without your orientation, the distance is just distance. The warmth is gone. The low-level confirmation is gone. The sustainable configuration has become an actual absence. That is what your genuine no contact does to the avoidance system, not through strategy, through the honest withdrawal of the infrastructure your love had been providing. What this means for how you think about your love. The love you brought to this dynamic was genuine, extraordinary in its quality, real in its depth, and it was, in a specific and worth-examining way, functioning as support for a configuration that was not serving you. Your love, patient, understanding, persistent, genuine, was making the avoidance distance comfortable. Was providing the low-level confirmation of being valued, even while the avoidant created and maintained the distance. Was keeping the bond alive in a form that required nothing of the avoidant while providing them with the specific knowledge that they were loved and that the love was not contingent on their showing up. That configuration, being loved without being required to show up, is the avoidant's preferred relational state, not consciously preferred, system preferred. The alarm is quiet because the stakes feel manageable. The intimacy is present but not demanding. The love is available but not requiring the reciprocal vulnerability that triggers the alarm. Your genuine no contact ends that configuration. This is not a judgment of your love. Your love was real and was extraordinary, and its genuineness is not in question. But its function in the dynamic, the specific role it was playing in making the distance comfortable, is worth understanding. Because understanding it clarifies what genuine no contact does that nothing else does. It removes the comfort of being loved without being required to show up. And that removal is the only thing that makes the cost of the distance fully felt. What to do with all of this? Nothing strategically. That is the honest answer to the question of what to do with this understanding. Because the moment the understanding becomes strategy, the moment the genuine no contact is maintained as a move designed to remove the infrastructure and produce the reckoning, it stops being genuine, and stops producing the thing that genuine no contact produces, both in the avoidant and in you. The only version that works for you, for your own genuine forward motion, and as the incidental byproduct of that motion, for the avoidant's honest reckoning with what they have, is the version that is not organized around producing anything in anyone. The version that is simply you, genuinely, in your own life, attending to what actually interests you. Building the relationships that are actually reciprocal, doing the work that is actually yours. Inhabiting your own interior with the genuine curiosity and genuine care that you have historically brought to everyone else's. That version, genuine, unstrategic, not for anyone's consumption, is both the version most capable of producing what the avoidance system responds to most honestly, and the version most worth being regardless of what it produces in anyone else. The avoidant expected you to reach. You are not reaching. Not because you calculated that not reaching would produce the surprise that produces the reckoning, because you are actually somewhere, in your own life, building something that is genuinely yours. And that genuineness, the specific live, demonstrated through actual investment genuineness of someone who is really here, is worth everything it produces, and worth everything it is, regardless.